Welcome back to Bisexual Killjoy, the place where we know bisexuality isn't a phase, it's a phenomenon. I'm Bailey, and this is...
Jace.
And we're back with our final installment on love and its intersections before our season finale. In today's episode, Bi Plus Community as Revolution, we're talking about Bi Plus Community. And you might be scratching your head and asking yourself, but wait, haven't we already talked about Bi Plus Community? And the answer is, sure, and we're going to talk about it some more.
For today's conversation, we'll be looking at some recent literature about Bi Plus Community, as well as Chapter 8, Loving Community, in Bell Hooks' All About Love.
Community is where my research sits. As of recording this in March 2026, I've got a paper about Bi Plus specific activism giving Bi Plus people a sense of belonging that's on submission right now. And hopefully by the time you're listening to this, it will have found its way. But what we found in those interviews, and that study was originally about how comfortable Bi Plus people felt at the doctor's office, if they could get care, was that people who were engaged in Bi Plus specific activism or advocacy work were more comfortable with openly identifying as Bi Plus, whatever that means to them. And they felt like they had access to Bi Plus community. Whereas folks who didn't engage in this work might have been less likely to have a Bi Plus community and or built their community connection outside of queer spaces.
Okay, but for the purposes of this episode, how are we defining community connection?
Okay, so I'd like to pull from a 2021 study from Gonzalez et al. It's almost like Bi's pans kind of stick together, Bi plus belonging and community connection. And they say connection to community is defined as one's desire to belong to a brighter community of people with shared identities to meet personal and emotional needs. Sense of belonging is defined as the experience of personal involvement in a system or environment so that persons feel themselves to be an integral part of that system or environment, and can include feeling respected, valued, accepted, and needed by a defined group. Community connection and a sense of belonging is important for the well-being of Bi Plus individuals, including supporting the mental health and positive identity development among community members.
Oh, so belonging and community aren't just about being physically present in a space. It's about feeling like that space recognizes you for who you are.
Correct. And research in this area, which is oddly more robust than a lot of other Bi Plus topics, though that's more true for women than it is for men or MBs, consistently shows that this kind of connection matters deeply, and I mean deeply, for Bi Plus people's well-being. A 2008 qualitative study from Heath and Mulligan, Shiny, Happy, Same-Sex Attracted Women Seeking Same, How Communities Contribute to Bisexual and Lesbian Women's Well-Being, talks about how Bi Plus and lesbian women felt that queer community engagement improved how people felt and increased their confidence. And we see similar results in the 2017 Flanders et al. Qualitative study, Positive Identity Experiences of Young Bisexual and Other Non-Monosexual People. And if you need quantitative data to prove that community belonging equals good and no community belonging equals bad, we've gone ahead and shared the Craney et al. And McLaurin and Castillo papers in the show notes. Basically, what we know is that connection to LGBTQ plus community helps buffer individuals from anti-bisexual discrimination and is, shocker, associated with lower depressive symptoms. And much like my work, we see that when Bi plus folks engage in bi-specific community, there's a reduced impact of internalized bi negativity. And that research is out with Lamb et al.
Well, it's awesome to know that community can have such a positive impact on Bi plus people. But most Bi plus people I know have always told me about how difficult it is to find Bi plus affirming community, though.
Yeah, and emphasis on the affirming, which we've talked about at length first with Dr. Mimi Huang in season 2 about the difference between accepting and affirming. I feel like a lot of Bi plus people will be accepted into queer spaces, but very rarely are affirmed in those spaces. I mean, we know that it's hard for folks to find queer community or bi-specific community anecdotally, right? And from the research perspective. A lot of Bi plus people just don't see the queer community as somewhere that they are, 1, allowed to be, and 2, allowed to be themselves.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm still so bummed that I wasn't there for that. I love Mimi. She's so awesome. And I will say there are way more papers about how biphobia, bi-erasure, bisexual stigma in straight and queer communities impact Bi plus people than there are papers about bi positivity or Bi plus community belonging and all of the joy that happens there.
Way, way more. Although also, similarly, Alison Cipriano, who was with us in a previous season, her lab is working on papers about the impact of Bi plus positivity. Anyways, but while we could have a whole episode on the barriers to community, I think for this episode, it would be more productive to talk about what's special about Bi plus community when it does exist. So if you're the type of person who thinks that that being in a bi plus community is unnecessary, listen up, because this shit is backed up by research. First, bi plus community offers something that many bi plus people struggle to find anywhere, which is a shared reality.
Yeah. For us bi plus folks, a shared reality is the experience we have when we walk into a room where we know that we won't have to explain or defend our bisexuality because we're all on the same page. Mm-hmm. In that moment, our shared reality is that bisexuality exists. Wow. And that it's a valid experience of our past, and also that biphobia fucking sucks. When we're in a space with others that share this basic understanding, we're in a shared reality that affirms the bi plus experience and all the twists and turns it can take.
And this is where I lose a lot of people at first. I had someone recently come to a meetup, and it was the first bi-specific meetup they'd gone to before. They're like, I just don't really believe in identity groups. I just don't think they're really useful. And then I'm like, well, why'd you come? And he's like, well, I was just going to try something different. And I was like, okay, cool. Have you been in places where people didn't think bisexuality existed and or was gross? And he was like, yeah. Well, in this space, everyone agrees that bisexuality exists and is not gross. Isn't that a happier place to be? And he's like, yeah, I get that. I'm like, uh-huh. But what do I know? What do I know? I just live this every day. Okay, so going back to this idea. So second, bi-specific spaces, especially like online groups like Discord, hello, and Reddit have become incredibly important since the internet is the first place that a lot of bi plus folks encounter people like them.
And it's important to remember that online spaces are real because real people are in them having real interactions. The interactions that we have with others on digital platforms shape how we view the world. Mm-hmm. We create memories with them, we tell stories, and we work through tough situations with our online friends. These spaces are often the very first opportunity bi plus people get to interact with others who affirm their bisexuality. It's important for us to remember that online spaces cannot be discounted just because they're online. This is still the real world.
Yeah, I'm thinking about my World of Warcraft salad days, and I met people in guilds that became so close to me that like I knew when they were having kids and when they were getting married.
I love that.
Of course, you've seen the videos of people who meet their spouse on World of Warcraft. It's a real place. It is a shared reality, right? Anyway, and third, and perhaps most important, these communities often facilitate comfort. Comfort with one's identity, comfort with using the word bi, pan, queer, fluid, like whatever it is, a place that you just get to use it and say, oh, this belongs to me.
And this comfort is about so much more than just coziness. It's a necessary reprieve from the constant, explicit, and implicit biphobic messages that we're getting from our monosexual peers. The comfort in these interactions is what allows our cups to get full again. It reminds us that we can take pride in our bi-plusness, even if the outside world has annoying opinions that are just mean. These are the times when we get to give to each other so that when we go back out there, we can build a more bi plus inclusive world from steadiness without as much burnout and knowing that we're supported.
And all of these things together help us find one another and actually build that community. But before we get into all of it, let's pause and have a word from our sponsors. Hey there, Killjoys. We started a Patreon because we got a podcast, and like every other podcaster our age, gotta have a Patreon to pay our bills. Subscribe now. Get access to extra episodes, Substacks, I think, video content, and more. Okay, love you. Bye.
Are you being for real?
Kinda. We got it all. We have access to our private essays on Substack, as well as audio components with them so you can carry us around and listen to us on the bus. We also have access to our Discord, access to live events, a lot more access to me and Jace to tell us about your problems and why your boyfriend isn't very good and why you should leave him and how you should date people and how you should make your dinner and all these other things. What other things?
Our very exclusive book club where we actually mail you a book every quarter and we sit down to discuss, sponsored by your favorite professor, Jace.
We'll also send you a handwritten letter. How about that? We'll send you some neat stickers and some other stuff that I find on my travels, because I'm a pack rat, and I'd love to share my bounty with you.
So if you want first dibs on all the new things that are coming up, join us there.
Thanks for supporting Bisexual Killjoy, and back to the show. And we're back.
As Bi Plus organizers, we are well aware of the fact that community is an imperative for our collective well-being. In fact, we don't actually shut up about it, like ever. Something we've learned the hard way is that community doesn't come from the ether. It's not just there patiently waiting to give. You have to build it and keep tending to it daily. It's a lot like a garden.
Yeah.
Community is a tangible manifestation and outcome of a loving practice that prioritizes interconnectedness.
Imagine I'm taking off my glasses. Well. Look at this conversation I have every day and I'm endlessly exhausted by. Okay, I want us to walk this out together. We know that community is essential to being happy and mentally resilient. Plus, it helps to have people to rely on things for when things go sideways. And to be honest, despite my happy demeanor today, I'm a little burnt out on community organizing and wishing I had a little more community in general. And you mentioned the community as a garden, and I think that's the perfect metaphor for it. And I'm just kind of feeling like a farmer right now who's dealing with some bad weather and stubborn seeds and weeds. I will seriously try not to be too salty about this as we chat, but I just wanted to be open and honest about how I'm feeling right now because you are totally right. Community does not come from the ether.
And I think it's hard to remember that because the only experiences or the only ways that we're taught about community is pre-existing community. Your church community, your school community when you're a kid and going regularly, seeing people 5 days a week. There is something that is pre-built that you just get to worm your way into and participate. How do I become a member? But as adults, building community involves so much more work that nobody teaches you how to do. Nobody teaches you where to start, what to look for, what are the essential skills needed. And I think in that way, we're all beginners at what it means to create and build community. We're all gardeners. We need to find someone who can mentor us in the process.
And not only beginning, because I feel like a lot of folks feel like they have to build a community when there are a lot of communities that already exist. Like when you were younger and you went to church every week, when you were in school, those were pre-designed, pre-made communities that existed before you came into the room. You found your place in it and then you leave it, right? Not every community is going to last forever for an individual. There's also this idea that things must be permanent when community, as we know, is it's a garden. It changes, it shifts, it feeds, there's feast, there's famine, there's all that stuff. But a lot of people don't know how to be community members because you don't have to necessarily be a builder. You can be a tender. You can be the person who just goes in for, the weeding, the sowing of seeds, and someone else is in charge of the construction. But because we have such a capitalistic mindset, which we'll talk more about, you go in and you just take from a farm stand or something, and you're like, well, I paid you $5, so that should be good enough. But now you're just a consumer. You're not a community member. Being a community member requires work too. And you and I have talked a lot about what would a utopian community look like when no one was concerned about the collapse of everything. What would happen if someone wasn't worried about I can't go to this thing because I've got 3 kids and I've got work tomorrow. I've got 6 jobs. I've got all these bills, and you can only hyper-focus on your micro community, which is you, yourself, and I, and, the 2 or 3 other people you share your life with. What does that look like?
I think that when we talk about utopia, we need to entertain the thought of what does an exchange look like that does not involve money. And I want to be very clear here. Very clear. I do not want to villainize or vilify money. We need money to survive. We need money to have experiences. We need money to buy back land and approach life with restorative justice. Money is a fact of life. At the same time, under capitalism, we have been conditioned to think that an exchange always involves money. An investment always involves money. And there are other ways that an exchange can happen. There are other ways that these give and takes can be equitable that do not necessarily involve a monetary transaction. It can be an IOU. It's like, hey, thank you so much for helping me move. Let me know when you need something next time. What else can it be? It can be a lending an ear, a listening ear on what's going on. It can be granted in the form of access of hey, come over here. I know that you've been interested in learning this new skill. Come sit with me. That fosters interdependency, which is crucial for a community's long-term survival.
Is that what you think utopian community is? Like this interdependent caring? Or is there more to utopia?
For me, a utopia is not a place where there's no conflict. And I know that double negative can get a little bit confusing, but in my experience, what I would like a utopia to be, conflict is a feature.
Yeah.
It's not a bug. I would say that in a utopia, we prioritize repair. We prioritize embracing difference. We prioritize owning our role and our actions. You don't have to do everything all the time in any given day. If you want to specialize in something, you have the liberty to do that. And if you want to be a jack of all trades and try your hand at everything, you're also able to do that in a space that supports you to grow. And that means that you also own up to whatever it is that you want to do and say, I know that I will make mistakes and I am looking forward to learning from them. And in that way, utopia is very bisexual.
Isn't it, though? I also just want to say that conflict, which we have alluded to, conflict isn't bad. Just like you were saying, conflict is not abuse. It's not. But conflict is where change happens. And that's why I think that it is a feature of a utopian community, any community. But when you allow it to be rooted in that repair and that curiosity allows for discovery, things can bend and change. And you say, oh, I guess we don't need this thing anymore. We need more of this thing. And the community shifts like a garden, right?
Yeah. The more that we feed into each other, the more that we pour into each other, the stronger we grow mutually, right? Like in terms of a relationship, but also independently. I posted recently on Threads about how sometimes I feel the need to over-explain myself. And I've reached a point where I have just stopped apologizing for that. I'm not going to say I'm sorry, but, and give you this long spiel. Sometimes I need to over-explain myself, and that's the way that I'm going to feel comfortable in this interaction. I'm not going to apologize for it. Instead, I'm going to embrace it as an opportunity for us to get to know each other better. Hey, here's my train of thought. I know it might be a little TMI, but I'm not super sure what you need to know and what you don't need to know. And I want us to get on the same page. Very often, very regularly, what happens is that we now understand each other better. Our relationship is stronger. And I know what to do next time.
Do you think that this idea of interdependence and communicating at that level is why community is both revolutionary and has the potential to be revolutionary?
I do think that communication is a radical act. And I think that taking up space is also a radical act. Especially I've talked about this before in previous seasons. I will continue talking about it forever. English is a language that requires a lot of assumption. Very often, interactions are scripted in such a way where you don't say more than you need to, quote unquote, and people give you dirty looks if you say too much. But I would argue that that's really not healthy because you're assuming so much in that interaction. So when you make a conscious choice to share more than is on the whole need to know basis, you are choosing curiosity. You are choosing to prompt this other person in terms of like, and what's going on in your mind? What are the things that you're thinking about? Instead of assuming that they don't have the time, or instead of assuming your calendar's full, just ask the question. I believe that to be a much greater sign of respect than attempting to guess your reaction.
So what I'm hearing in terms of community itself is that fundamental building blocks, as of now in this discussion, are communication, vulnerability, and a willingness to work.
And intimacy.
Yeah, and intimacy. Okay, so again, if it's so great, why don't we have it?
Well, I'm going to talk about your favorite subjects, Bailey. Want to guess?
Is it the Industrial Revolution?
Yeah, we're starting there.
Okay.
So here's the gist. Capitalism and patriarchy both love to boast and talk and teach about how the nuclear family is the best option for childhood upbringing. I mean, it's not just that I have opinions. Research also says that that is just not true. Nuclear families are not necessarily in any way the best way to raise a family.
Yeah.
Bell Hooks does allude to this heavily in this chapter on community. Nuclear families have been shown to be dysfunctional, with environments that focus more on reproducing capitalistic and patriarchal values instead of healthy coping mechanisms and self-regulation. You're like bursting at the seams. You have thoughts?
Yes, but we can talk about them later. Go on.
Okay, so if nuclear families aren't the option, then what is? Here's the thing. We need extended kin. We need aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, etc. to counteract these negative effects that come from being siloed in a tiny space with a very limited amount of people. Very often, when our circumstances and our families of origin are not ideal or are very dysfunctional, it is someone in this extended network that invites us to see beyond our current situation and ponder alternative scenarios. It is with them that we are able to envision a world, a scenario, a situation where we can heal and do something different. And this goes far beyond extended families of origin. In communities, we are able to engage with diverse individuals with different belief systems, different core values, and overall different life perspectives. This means that when we are in community, we are rich in diversity, options, and we're encouraged to think for ourselves. We also learn the importance of sacrifice, not in the martyr or self-harming kind of way, but sacrifice in a very practical sense. No one can have it their way all the time. It's not going to happen, especially not in a community where we prioritize interdependence and collaboration. It is in this setting that we learn about compromise. What are the things we are not willing to negotiate? Who is it that we trust enough for them to challenge us with what we think? And what are our core values that we will not compromise? This is the process of self-initiation, where we learn who we are in the grander context of a society.
T. Something I really don't think people, and especially Americans, understand is that community doesn't negate individuality. It enhances it. In order for a community to thrive, the group must recognize that it's made up of individuals, people who have separate identities, goals, dreams, and skills. And we're very suspicious of this. We're very suspicious of someone who lives in a cooperative, co-housing, co-living like I do. Immediately, people assume like, oh, you're in a cult. Oh, you're in a cult. Oh, you live in that cult house. I've lived in my house for 8 years. Co-living is really dope because you do live with a bunch of individuals, but you have an agreed upon rules and beliefs that you want to uphold. And they're really basic, like we're going to assume good intent. We're going to take care of each other in the space. We're going to bring things up when issues arise instead of letting them simmer. And that's just like the agreement that everyone goes into. We don't have the same faiths. We don't have the same diets. We don't have the same schedules. And it works. But people are super, super, super suspicious of it. And even now, Richie and I are thinking about taking the next steps of our lives, and we'd like to purchase our own home. But we don't want to buy a 2-bedroom. We don't want to buy a house similar to what we grew up in. We really like the co-living model because we get to share our grocery bills. I don't know about all of you, but I'm telling you, I did not feel the crisis of the rising grocery prices because I've been buffered by the community. I split my bills with like 7 other people. It makes life so much easier. When I'm tired, someone makes dinner for me. When someone else is tired, I make dinner for them. People go to events together. You know, when I got married, half of my house was in my wedding group. You know, those people stood up with me. One of my best friends from this collective married me and Richie. And it's because those people have become my family. We're interconnected. And in order to foster a healthy interdependency between community and the individual, we must prioritize our own personal growth so we can show up as our best selves in our communities. And that's so true. This house is the first time I've ever felt safe in my whole life. And what happens when you feel safe is that you get to grow. Like, I wouldn't be where I am as far as like leadership goes and running all the shit that I run if I hadn't had the chance to like be comfortable enough to be myself, to be accepted. And if that's what makes something a cult, girl, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. That just sounds like a group of people who like each other.
I mean, yeah. Sounds like a really nice friendship, a living situation.
Yeah.
Oh no, you're surrounded by people who are nice and sweet and who care about your well-being.
Brainwashed. Sorry. I guess it doesn't help that I'm wearing like a white dress today. It really isn't a cult. Like, oh, Bailey, you're saying it too much. Like, but it's really not. I'm just so tired of hearing about it 8 years in. That's all. That's all.
I mean, I think that that's totally fair. And I love that you bring up the importance of feeling safe in order to foster our own individual growth. Because for a community to foster that kind of interdependency, that means that self-development it isn't optional.
Mm-hmm.
I would go as far as to argue that the avoidance of self-development and introspection actually greatly contributes to the problems of loneliness that young people are currently facing.
Ooh, yeah. I mean, community is meant to be the safe space to learn and grow, but getting stuck in the same unhelpful patterns while rejecting support means that you will inevitably be left behind. Being able to show up for ourselves is the first big step in being able to show up for others. So yeah, I mean, like, community helps, but it can't do everything for you.
And this is why Bell Hooks calls for solitude in the form of meditation and reflection as crucial elements as we form community commitments. Solitude helps us understand who we are and what we're bringing into shared spaces and what others are bringing too.
And when a lot of people in a community do the same thing when they're working on themselves, we can build fellowship with one another. Seriously, imagine being in a place, literally or metaphorically, where you're not constantly defending your identity or projecting insecurity onto everyone else, and no one else is either. You can actually meet each other where you are, can actually give of yourself and know that someone will take from you, but that they will give something back. I mean, we explored mutuality in our last episode on friendship, so if you need a refresher or hear us talk about that more at length, look no further.
And for us as BI+ people, we're told constantly that our presence isn't needed or wanted in any given space. We're constantly being told that we're taking up too much space and that we need to, quote, simmer down or learn our place bullshit. This deeply affects our self-esteem. It's so easy to internalize that we don't belong anywhere because nobody wants us in their group. But this sense of belonging is essential to our individual well-being, as well as our collective bonds. Communities fracture when they insist that a subgroup isn't as, quote, worthy of attention that others receive. That's why we're so insistent about integrating BI+ activism to the broader LGBTQ movement. In order for the whole community to thrive, the community must recognize the value that individual members bring to the collective. This is the way that collectives honor abilities, skills, and commitments. And it recognizes individuals as essential to the way that things work and progress.
And once you accept that community is made up of individuals who are growing, learning, and figuring things out in ways that are sometimes really messy, shout out to a 25-year-old version of Bailey, it means accepting something else. Community is going to involve conflict. Not because the community is failing, but newsflash, everybody, people are complicated. We misunderstand each other. We bring our histories into relationships and community spaces, and sometimes we hurt each other on accident, and sometimes we hurt each other on purpose. Conflict is going to happen. So the real test isn't whether or not does conflict happen in our community, it's does our community have the capacity for repair?
And in a lot of systems we've grown up in, there are two options. Either you tolerate the harm indefinitely, or you cut people off completely. But repair offers us a third option. Repair says that harm can be acknowledged, accountability can happen, and people can work together towards rebuilding trust. This reminds me of a story that Hooks actually talks about in this chapter, where someone she had considered a friend started writing negative reviews about her and her work. Hooks was actually really devastated, but she persisted to be able to find some sort of peace. She says, through the practice of compassion and forgiveness, I was able to sustain my appreciation for her work and cope with the grief and disappointment I felt about the loss of this friendship. Practicing compassion enabled me to understand why she might have acted the way she did and to forgive her. Forgiving means that I am able to see her as a member of my community still, one who has a place in my heart should she wish to claim it.
I think it's important to say that repair isn't the same thing as pretending something didn't happen. Repair actually requires a lot of honesty, and someone has to take responsibility for the harm they caused. And it means that the other person gets to express what they experienced, and then both people decide what rebuilding looks like, if possible. And just as like a caveat, we're not saying that if an abuser in your life has done terrible things to you, we're not talking about that. We're talking about like these community moments where someone hurts your feelings in a big fundamental way. And can you find a way back to one another? Are they willing to talk about it? Are you willing to talk about it? And I really want to make that distinction clear. Like that's what we're advocating here right now.
Absolutely. And I call this the figuring out of feelings. To me, what repair looks like is being included in the figuring out of feelings. Sometimes folks need some time away. Sometimes there needs to be a cool off period, and that is totally okay. But the commitment to come back and say, I think I did that because of this and this other thing, and this is how I'm feeling about it now. I would like to check in with you. Mm-hmm. That means that you're not going to have it all figured out. Your feelings aren't going to be super clear and laid out. This is why this happened and how it's going to go moving forward. It's a lot more curious. It's a lot more ambiguous because that is how you create intimacy. That is how you create vulnerability. That's how you get to know one another. That's where the healing happens. Yeah. When you experience a community that can actually move through conflict, it's a really powerful experience.
It really is. And community can become a place to repair our relationship with forgiveness because we teach each other that disagreement doesn't automatically mean exile. Sometimes if people are willing to do the work, those bonds can become stronger. And, before we talk about how to build these communities, we are going to take another brief pause for a word from our sponsors.
Bisexual Killjoy is growing, friends.
What started as just a podcast has now blossomed into a whole community project.
We're not only dropping episodes, we've got culture commentary and hyper-personal essays just for you on our Substack. Get all your burning questions answered through our advice column, Give It To Me by Plus, and you can hang out with other Killjoys in our brand new Discord server.
The best part?
It's free to join.
But if you love the work we do and want to make sure we don't burn the fuck out, you can become a paid subscriber and you'll get sweet perks like bonus episodes, bonus posts, and exclusive discussion groups with your favorite Killjoys.
We'd love to have you in the mix.
Come join the community.
See you there.
And we're back. All right. So how do we create community? Basics, 1, 2, 3. We show up. We respond to the needs of those around us. We talk to each other. We reach out to our neighbors. We get to know them. We build relationships. Boom, you're done. Go forth.
We also focus on repair.
Word.
No more just throw the whole relationship away at the first sign of disagreement or inconvenience. Community means repair. Commitment means repair. We also practice solitude. We learned what we stand for individually. We get to know ourselves as multifaceted, complex individuals. And then we share that complexity with others.
Wow. Shocked. We also offer help when it is inconvenient or uncomfortable. Community means work. And sometimes work is inconvenient. That's how you show up to others and show them that they matter to you. And that means like going to the airport at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
That means helping people move. That means sitting with people in a doctor's office when they're sick. That means cooking for folks. It's inconvenient. Being friends, having community is a deep drain on my time, but it's also super dope. Because on the flip side, like you also get that care in return. Now, you might be listening to these tips and thinking, that's great, but I don't even know how to find the people I should be showing up for. And here are a few ways to start. Building community is about consistency. Seeing the same people on some kind of regular basis, be it in person or online, okay? That increases familiarity, and familiarity creates trust.
So you can start by finding a place or a group that you can commit to participating with regularly. Mm-hmm. This doesn't have to be every day or every week, but at least once a month is a really good place to start. This can be your local church, playing club sports, yoga, Pilates, D&D group, an organization that you can volunteer at, or even attending your local library's events. Find a general niche that you're interested in, a general kind of set of people that you want to get to know better, and get involved.
Yeah, go to the same knitting circle every week, and all of a sudden you're getting to know Brenda, who's been knitting since before you were born, and she can teach you a thing or two. Now, here's the important part about all of this. You have to keep going. You have to keep showing up. As a community organizer, this is like my number one thing. I start to recognize names and faces. I start to know like who's looking for a job, who's going through something right now, who's single. Okay, I've got a Rolodex at this point. I'm like, yeah, who is single? What are you looking for right now? I'm like, oh, you should meet this person and this person. And then they do meet. And then they sit down at a little event that I'm hosting and I'm seeing the chemistry and I feel vindicated because I was fucking right. Anyway.
Are you Cupid? Are you just trying to play Cupid?
Look, I just want to be thanked in a wedding toast. That is a life goal of mine. Like, thank you so much to Bailey for bringing us together. That's all I want to do.
Okay, life goals.
Like being famous would be cool. Making a bunch of money would be really cool. Owning a home would be really cool. But honestly, I want to be at a wedding toast. So the more often you show up, people get to know you. And then you'll start to remember people's names and faces and interactions. And that's where the relationships are built. The thing is, a lot of folks want to go for fun stuff. My events for socializing are always way more popular than my events for like community activism or skill building because folks just want to have a good time. I get it, but that's kind of like surface level stuff. When you go to smaller groups and you skill build, you will actually learn way more about individuals. And then start offering help. Start being the person who gets involved. Again, we're recording this in March, and this episode will come out on my birthday, maybe? I think this episode comes out June 10th, my birthday. So my birthday wish that I hope is accomplished is that I have a lot of people who want to help me for Pride. A lot of people who want to come table. A lot of people who want to donate just 2 hours of their time so that I can go have lunch and come back. But you have to like offer genuine support, have a listening ear, carry a box, just a couple of hours of your time, whatever you can give, whatever you can make yourself give. Like, again, it's not convenient, but whatever someone needs. And you're just like, okay, inconvenient, but I'm going to do it. And if you do that, guys, oh my God, you have no idea how much your life will be transformed. You'll have a community. You will have a fucking community. And you will no longer be like, oh, where am I going to find some friends? Because boom, you already made them. And once you have a couple of friends, that snowballs into more friends and more friends and more friends and more friends. And all of a sudden, for some reason, everywhere you go, you know someone. Do you know how often this happens to me, Jace? I started the gang. Now I know BIPOC writers from all over. My friend Liz was like, oh, I'm going to this book fair. Oh, do you remember that? Do you remember that pop-up by Read My Lips? And I was like, pop-up by Read? I know the organization. Where do we go to a pop-up? She told me. I'm like, oh, word. Oh, well, I hope you have a good time. Tell Anne-Marie I said hi. And Liz is like, who's Anne-Marie? I'm like, the owner? Her and her sister run Read My Lips. And she's like, you know the owner? I'm like, yeah. I know all the bisexuals, Liz. And that was just really cool that I got to have that moment because I work really hard to build community and space. So,
yeah,
as usual, we have homework for you, my friends. For our allies, we invite you to make a conscious effort to include your fellow BIPOC friends into your events, your gatherings, your groups, your shenanigans, if you will. Welcome them with open arms and BIPOC affirmations. And as Zori Paul would say, give them a micro affirmation, which is not just being like, I like your shirt. Listen to that episode too. The world can be so fucking cruel to us. So you can let your friendship be a respite.
For our BIPOC listeners, this is your reminder to reach out to your community. This can be your church, your group of friends, or your extended family. Plan a night out, a dinner, or a picnic. Connect with your circle and share how much you appreciate them. This is the most life-affirming work that you can possibly do.
Mm-hmm. And for the LGBTQ plus organizations that I hope listen to the show, we dare you. We double dog dare you to prioritize BIPOC community building for the next 6 months. Watch what can happen before your eyes in just 6 months.
This has been such a powerful reminder of how important community is, how community is inconvenient, but that's exactly why it's rewarding, and the importance of recognizing yourself and knowing who you are before you try to get involved in a group. Trust me, you're going to be faced really quickly with who it is that you are. Community is a mirror in a lot of ways. And it is very important that you like the person in the mirror, that you recognize them, so that when you go forth and make more friends and share life with more people, it's fun and exciting because you know who you are. And that's really, really dope.
Yeah, it is. Well, thank you again for tuning into Bisexual Killjoy, where we know that bisexuality isn't a phase, it's a phenomenon. To support us, share us with your friends, subscribe to our Substack, rate our podcast, preferably 5 stars, wherever you're listening to us right now. As always, we want to hear from you. We'd love to answer your questions in our advice column, Give It To Me Bi Plus. You can support us on Patreon to keep the work going and get access to our community Discord because online spaces are real spaces.
Heck yeah.
And until we meet again, keep being a bisexual killjoy.
Stay bisexual and stay strong.